We're inside Frederick. We're at the courthouse square. This is exactly how it looked 150 years ago. That brick building over there was owned by the richest lawyer in town, a guy named John Ross. And we don't want you to confuse him with another Ross I'm going to talk about in a minute. September the 9th, the 10th, General Lee was in this area. Jeb Stuart was here, Stonewall was here, everybody was here. And they hung out there at Mr. Ross's house. Now, Stonewall Jackson had a friend in this town. And it's through that friend that the order that we found in the field was placed there for Mitchell Barton to find. Let's walk down the street. And down here we're going to find a church, the first Frederick Presbyterian Church. And there's next to the church is a manse. There's a pastor's house called a manse. And in that house, at September of 1862, there was a pastor named the Reverend Dr. John Ross. And it was this individual who was Stonewall's friend. Now we've just come down the street a few feet, and you can see that that's the Frederick Church over there on the right, and next to it here is Reverend Ross's house. Now let's continue on a little bit. It's okay. It's all okay. So what happened? Stonewall Jackson and Reverend Ross had known each other in the early 1850s in Lexington, Virginia. Ross was a pastor in Roanoke, Virginia, and Stonewall was a professor of artillery at the Virginia Military Institute, and they were Presbyterians, and they came together in meetings, general meetings of the faithful, and they became apparently friends. And when Stonewall and Lee were here on this street on September the 9th and the 10th, and they formulated their plan about how to induce McClellan not to do the one thing he should have done, they needed this order. They needed to plant it in his hands. Why? Because they wanted him to know where General Lee was. And they wanted him to think that General Lee's main body, which means the bulk of his force, was behind Turner's Gap at Boonesboro. That's what they needed him to think, so that he would be afraid of an attack against his right flank. That's the whole point of handing him this order, is to trick him into thinking that. So Stonewall came and went inside that manse, and he visited privately with Reverend Ross. And the conclusion, you can talk about speculation, but all these Civil War buffs, that's all they do. The facts bring us to Reverend Ross. It would have been an easy thing for Reverend Ross, as all these Union troops came into the town and came into the farm fields on the suburbs of the town, along with all the population, all the civilian population that were rushing out with cakes and food and flags and hurrahs, to join that mass of people and just stand there in the field as these soldiers were stacking their arms. He would not have been a threat. They wouldn't even have paid any attention to the man. And when Mitchell had his back turned and Ross simply walked by, he just dropped it on the ground. It had to be, the cigars had to be fresh. To suggest that the package was lost 48 hours earlier in a farm field, to deal with all the dew in the morning, not even mentioning the fact that on the 11th of September, the entire day was a rainstorm. So Mitchell would never have reached down to pick up a soggy group of cigars. He would have reached down only because they looked fresh And to look fresh, they had to be fresh, which means they had to be laid there not too long before he arrived, like minutes. And that's how the connection was made between General Lee and General McClellan. Now, after the Battle of Antietam, and this is evidence, after the Battle of Antietam, Reverend Ross had been the pastor here for 5 years. And within 2 weeks of the Battle of Antietam, he's gone. He's left his position, he's resigned, and he's gone from Frederick.